Hey everybody, welcome to Inspire Your Success podcast. My name is Michael Leonard, former corporate zombie turned lifestyle entrepreneur. I'm on a mission to inspire millions of people to stop settling for average and create the life that you deserve. Each week, I'll be bringing on world-class experts, entrepreneurs, and high achievers to give you the inspiration to take massive action. I'm confident these successful people will give you the spark to create an epic life and business. Thank you so much for spending time with me today. Here's your episode. Hey everybody, welcome back to Inspire Your Success podcast. Today's guest is someone that I really enjoyed the conversation with, and I know you're going to get a ton of great information. Today's guest is Nicholas Bayerle. Nicholas is the founder of Billion Dollar Body and the creator of the Billion Dollar Brotherhood. Nicholas is someone that story that you can really take a lot of different approaches from and realize that he's been successful for so many reasons, including investing in himself, working on his relationships, his networking, understanding the impacts of fitness on his mindset, and really just developing himself to become the person that he's want to become. And what's so great about his story is that his background really didn't set him up to be the most successful person, and he's done so much at such a young age. So as he says on his website, he went from being broke, obese, and no girlfriend to now married to the woman of his dreams, fit, and running a thriving business. You see, in high school, he was bullied, he was overweight, and graduated with a 1.8 GPA. No one in his family thought he would even graduate, let alone accomplish anything big. But once he lost the weight, he got into his missions work and really figured out what he was trying to do with his life with the help of his wife, Amanda. Now, as soon as I started following him, I really began to understand, hey, this guy is authentic. He is really someone that's working on himself, and he's trying to help others with his brand and his business. And I just love the different ways that he approaches things with mindset, with goals, with networking, and really just becoming the person that you want to become and stepping into it. And so he's going to talk more about that, but I think you're going to get a ton of wisdom from this. So highly recommend that you check out the show notes for some more information on him and follow his brand as well as his podcast that he runs with his wife on Fridays. They do a power couple episode, which is really entertaining and fun. So make sure you check that out and make sure to follow Nicholas. He has so much great stuff. Thanks again for being here and enjoy the episode. All right, Nicholas, thanks so much for being here. Really appreciate it, man.
Hey, Michael, I appreciate it as well. Obviously, we run in some similar circles, so anyone who's listening to the show, congratulations. My life was changed in an instant, in just one moment for the negative, also changed in an instant for the positive, and I found that on shows just like this, and thank you, Michael, for putting it on. That type of transformation can happen.
Absolutely. Well, that's so cool to hear and a perfect introduction because as I mentioned in the intro, you have a super successful brand with Billion Dollar Body. And I know you've had to overcome some things to get to this point. So I'd love to always go back because, you know, we see these people that are doing unbelievable things, entrepreneurs and building great businesses, helping tons of people. Can you take us back to how it all got started?
Yeah, man, absolutely. So my dad was a business owner and so was my uncle. They both have been through good times and bad times, but I learned from a young age that if I just had a lawnmower and a weed whacker, I'd be fine. My dad taught me that when I was about 9. He's like, listen, no matter what, you can go make it happen. And I always say that money follows value, and value is solving more problems for more people. So obviously a lawn care is a problem. You could either solve it on a bigger scale, or you could solve bigger problems that people want to pay more for. But at a young age, I understood that no matter what, if I just went out there and did something for someone that was valuable or solved a problem, or fulfilled the need, I was going to be able to make it. But at first, I didn't really care about that. I just wanted to be an athlete. I just wanted to basically go out there and do extreme sports and be number one at everything I did. So at 2 years old, I started racing bicycles. I think at 4 years old, I started racing motocross. But there was things along the way, just like with everyone else, that curved my life in different directions. My parents split up when I was 4. I remember writing my first suicide letter when I was 7. I remember at 13 years old, after like battling different types of depression and all these different things that were going on. I don't even know if it's really depression, but it's just like pressure on myself to be number one with a developing brain that I don't think could handle it all yet. And I remember thinking, man, if I could just get the attention of my dad, like that's all that I want. I just wanted his approval. I remember like skateboarding. I remember racing motocross. I remember doing all these things and just hoping that he could see me or hear what was going on. Or if I did really well, then I'd finally get that like approval that I was looking for. And so this one day I woke up and I was like, Dad, I got it. Like, we're going to travel. I'm going to get out of school. We're going to go hardcore at this thing, motocross. I'm going to go be the number one in the world. And I thought, like, oh, this is exactly what he's been wanting to hear. I think he's just been wanting me to go all in.
Right.
And he turned around and looked at me and he's like, you'll never be the best. And it crushed me. And the only reason I share that is because that was one of the moments that shifted me in a bad direction at the time in one moment. Legitimately, I left there. I went through all of high school after that, got a 1.8 GPA, couldn't even play sports in high school because my grades were so bad. I gained 60 pounds because I had no reason to do anything, and I literally stopped talking to people. I spent my entire high school years pretty much indoors. During summer, I would maybe see 1 to 2 people. That's how much that deeply affected me. And so no matter where people are at, I know we'll get into like some of the positive things afterwards, but there's nothing that has to be shown. Like, yeah, top 30 entrepreneur under 30, featured in Forbes, all these different things. But it all started from like this kid that was deeply hurt at 13 that I thought was a negative at the time, now is a positive, and shifted me in a direction where I was introverted, 60 pounds overweight, hated meeting new people, didn't gain any social skills, didn't have a girlfriend, like lost everything. So then I'm graduated from high school with no Letterman's jacket, 1.8 GPA, 60 pounds overweight, no girlfriends, no friends, like rock bottom.
Wow. So you got, unbelievable story, because obviously I know where you are now. So this is 18, you're graduated high school. You said you were under a 2.0. So at this time, were you thinking to yourself, like, I'm not going to go to school, I'm just going to get a job? Like, what was your next move after high school?
Yeah, that's a good question. And just so people know, I went to summer school every year. That's how I graduated. People are like, how did you graduate like that? I went to summer school every single year. And what ended up happening was that I was always a motivated kid. Look at how I started out, like 2 years old, 4 years old, the way my dad bred me, all these different things. I was just putting it towards other things like video games and just different outlets where I didn't have to put myself out there. But I still was that motivated, hungry kid that was excited about life but didn't have a plan. And what ended up happening that shifted my life for the positive in a moment was this one guy that was a boxer at my school. He pulled out this bag of fruit. And I was like, everyone's eating like crap here. Why is this guy eating fruit? So I actually asked him, which is really bold. If anyone out there is like struggling with self-confidence, self-esteem, weight issues, all those things, it puts yourself in a weird spot when you start asking people about health, when you're already getting made fun of for it. And somehow I mustered the strength to do it. And the guy said, well, I have a boxing coach that wants me to weigh in at the correct weight and perform at the highest level. So he has me on a plan. And that was the first time that I actually thought about, if I follow a plan, I'll get a result. I never really thought about that before. And that's what I did. I followed that plan for 6 months. I lost 60 pounds. And that literally gave me my entire life back. I went out there and rekindled the relationship with my dad. I went out there and finally got my license. I didn't get my license till I was 17 years old, which is embarrassing. Like, these are all these weird different things that had happened that really affected my life that held me back for a long time. So what I ended up doing is, I thought about going to college. I thought about going out there and doing other things, traveling, seeing the poor. Like, when I was 18 years old, I went through a really weird transition where I finally found out that God was real, and I had no clue like what to do with it all. But I knew from the beginning of time that I wasn't just going to go out there and get a regular job and do what everyone else wanted from me. So even when my dad was telling me as a business owner, Nicholas, you need to go get a job. Like, even if you want to go improve in an area, go work for someone and get paid. But I was so stubborn that I would literally pay places to learn from them. So I remember getting into coffee was one of the outlets that I had. And I was studying all about coffee because it was the second most traded commodity in the world. And I remember looking at it and being like, man, what's the ways that I can grow and do it my way? And I looked at every cafe and I was like, they're not doing it my way. So I'm not going to work for them. So I literally paid coffee shops to train me how to make coffee when I could have been paid to sit there and learn it for them. But I did it my way. And so that was me, like, always wanting to do things for a bigger purpose and excel as fast as possible. So needless to say, getting a job and things like that didn't really work out. During this process, I also met Amanda. So you got to think, I'm now this guy who lost 60 pounds, got a six-pack, didn't really feel any better about myself. Like, I was still like, okay, what am I supposed to do with my life? I was happy to be out. I was happy to do stuff, but there was still holes and gaps missing, which I'm sure many people have felt. You probably felt it even with golf, right? Like, you're out there golfing and you're like, cool, this part of my life is awesome, but there's other parts of my life that if I don't have those, then there's still holes and gaps. And that's what I had. And it obviously led me to meeting Amanda, to then getting married, 20 and 18 years old, still no income, no job, no nothing.
Wow. Okay. No, there's a ton there. And first of all, congrats on the weight loss as well. I know that's something that I've struggled with in the past. And so to have the courage to, like you said, a self-proclaimed introvert, to be able to go up to somebody that is the exact opposite of you, go out and do it, that's unbelievable, because as you know, obviously fitness can have a huge impact in so many other areas of your life other than just appearance. So like you mentioned, you meet her, you guys are, you said 20 and 18. And I think this is where I've really started to learn a lot about your story, just from in your email list and following you on Instagram and stuff. So this is where I'm really excited about, because how old are you now?
26.
26. So I know in 6 years you've been able to absolutely transform your life. So at 20 and 18, you guys don't have any income. Where are you living? Like, what are you doing? Is she working? Or I know that you're the born entrepreneur, which I absolutely love. Just going to make it. You're going to do it one way or another, paying people to make coffee. I think that's incredible. So what are you doing at this time for income?
Yeah, so at this point, we're just scraping by. I'm digging holes in people's front yards. I'm helping move stuff around. I'm doing just like random odd jobs because, again, I could control it. I knew the end date. It wasn't a long-term commitment to something that I didn't want to do. Amanda has a little bit of savings. She's picking up some jobs at Costco, like working at those little booths where people sell different items at Costco, doing little random things. And so for us, again, it came down to non-negotiables. As we got married, we realized really quickly, what is something we didn't get married to be apart our entire life. Because obviously there was the quick thought of like, okay, if she gets a job and I get a job, what will life be like? Will the hours perfectly overlap all the time? Or will there be time where I go in earlier and she goes in later and then there's not overlap? And we automatically knew that inside of our relationship, we didn't get married to be apart. So that was like one of the first things that we filter our life through, was that we wanted to be together, which means that we only looked at options where we could do things together. And that's what ultimately would led us first to network marketing. Network marketing was an awesome opportunity. I remember I had no clue what network marketing was, dude. Legitimately, right. I saw this and I was like, this is the best thing that I've ever seen. I went there and bought it that night. It was like $500. I bought into this company and I invited over my best friends. I was like, listen, check this out. And needless to say, they did not think the same way that I did. They totally were like offended. They were upset. They became distant because they had, quote unquote, heard of those things before. And I think as entrepreneurs, one of the best things that you can do is have this ridiculously stupid open mind. I always tell people sometimes you have to be dumb enough to be successful. Meaning that I had never been to one of those things before. When I read something, I was just like, well, they said this is how that works, so I went out there and did it. And I remember 2 months later, us getting a car with the company and all these different things, when many people heard the same messages, the same things that were going on, and they heard the same talk, but through their mind, they were thinking, man, I've heard of this before. I've heard people talk of this before, and that stuff doesn't work. I have to do it this way, this way, this way. And they wouldn't follow the process. And those are the people that don't jump on podcasts, that aren't continually learning, but people that are on podcasts just like this, they're different types of people. And I feel like I would fit in that category as well, where this one guy got up on stage, told us exactly what we had to do to build a business. And for that first year in network marketing, I followed that. That first month, I did exactly what he said. He said, if you do this, you're going to produce $12,500 in revenue. And I remember going out there and going, okay, why not? Like, that's what he said. He's the expert. Let's go do this. And I remember we did $12,547 in revenue in that exact 30 days, while everyone else sat there and was like, oh, it still doesn't work. I told you it doesn't work, because they actually didn't follow it. And so jumping into entrepreneurship, Amanda and I were stupid enough to succeed because all we did was follow what other people said.
That is powerful. And you said that was 12,000. Was that in a year or was that 30 days?
That was 30 days.
30 days. So that's incredible. I mean, that has to just shift your belief system as well. I mean, to make that kind of money at such a young age, when you weren't the best in school, you were going to summer school, things like that, but then to all of a sudden make $12,000. I mean, there's so many people that are going to be listening to this that could be 40, 50, 60 and haven't ever made that much in their life. So what did that do to your belief system at that point?
Yeah, I think that there's always going to be people to like when people are looking at their external environment, there's always going to be people to look at and justify where you're at. Comparison can be negative either way. And this is what I mean by perspective. I try to use perspective to pull me forward, not to push other people down. So when I look at it, I could look at the fact that, wow, that's more money than I've ever produced in my whole life. That's more money than a lot of people in my city have produced in their whole life, and all these different things. But ultimately, that means that I'm having to look at who I'm better than to justify where I'm at. And then if I look at who's better than me, it also is putting me back in the same category. Because no matter where you're at, until you're like the top 2 wealthiest people in the world, there's always going to be people to look at and be like, oh my goodness, look how much better they are to me. Meaning that if your goal is to make $10,000 in a month, and then you go and do it, but your friends now make $100,000 in a month, that $10,000 a month feels like $1,000 a month because you're still in the same category. And so one thing I learned really quickly was that when I saw people making $10,000 a month, I personally thought they were like a god. I was like, how are you doing that? Like, I was scared to go meet them. I didn't want to shake their hand, right? I was like looking from a distance, like, would it be weird if I went up to them and said hi? That's where my mindset was at because of my environment was dictating what I thought was possible. These people were doing something I thought was impossible. I remember a few short years later, I caught myself at this guy's house and he said, I don't eat breakfast until we make $10,000 a day. And I sat there and I was like, wow, this is so interesting how my environment has changed, which has changed my expectation, which means I'm still unsuccessful in my environment, but I'd rather be the most unsuccessful person in the room making $50 million a year than being the most successful person in the room making $500,000 a year. And so that's where shifting my perspective all came from the environment, and then the results always came after that. So the thing is you'll always consume things that will dictate your beliefs. Your beliefs will then dictate your actions, and your actions will change the result. So though that was an outward manifestation of a result, ultimately there was a process beforehand that I like for people to be able to see so that they can actually control it. Because you can't necessarily control an end result, but you can control the actions that it takes to get there and re-look at those actions. And if they don't give you the result that you want, all you have to do is shift the actions. So the goal is always to have an external result. So let's say you want to make that $12,000 or $10,000 in a month, or it doesn't matter what it is, $50,000 in a month. And you look at that and you go, okay, this is the process that I think it would take to get there. You write it all out. And then you execute on the plan, and then you figure out, man, did those actions get me that result? And if not, let me shift the actions. I feel like too many people get too caught up in the end result and they get frustrated because they're not focusing on the actual actions to get there. They're focusing on, did I hit the goal or not? And this becomes wishful thinking. Like, I want to make $10 million this year. I want to make $1 million this year. And then it's wishful thinking. It's like, hopefully something will happen to make that happen for me. Rather than, okay, what am I thinking about every single day? What environment am I in? What expectations do I have? What is my goal and what is my plan to actually get there? And what can I do daily to make that happen and shift it daily until I start seeing the results that I want? So there was a lot that I learned from that moment, but I also learned that the worst part of success is a little bit. You know, you become a little bit successful, and then all of a sudden you stop doing the things that got you successful in the first place, which obviously leads me 12 months into that journey. We lost everything. I was making $750 a month. A year later, I lost everything. I didn't feel like I had the motivation. I just moved to a new city. I moved back to San Diego, lost everything. We're living in a condo. I remember going to a business event after that, and we're getting moved out of this condo. We had to move into a back of a Safeway home. I couldn't even afford to get approved for any apartment in all of San Diego. I got lucky enough to get approved for this, like the back of the Safeway home where you couldn't be a criminal if you lived there. And I was like I was the only person that was that broke that wasn't a criminal is what they told me. They were like, I don't know how you're this broke, but you're clean, so you can maybe live here. And so I remember being at a business event, and I remember getting an email that told me, hey, just so you know, the state, they're not letting you move in. We're not letting anyone move back to that house. And having to sit there and look at my wife, who's inspired, who's looking at this like speaker on stage because we were still investing in ourselves. And I was just about to go fly to her parents for Christmas. And just to think about all of that when we were going to come home, I either had to tell them then and ruin the trip, or wait till we got home and carry this burden on my chest that we'd have no place to move into. And that was like one of the worst moments, was that transition. And we had to move into a 400 square foot apartment, and that's really like rock bottom, the groundbreaking where we built our business upon.
Wow. And I can't even tell you how much I resonate with so much there. I mean, the environment, like you said, that just shapes your beliefs and what's possible. And so what would you say in those 12 months that you stopped doing? Was it your daily habits? Was it goal setting? Were you hanging out with the wrong type of people? Like, what took you from making $12,000 a month to going back to basically square one?
Yeah, I mean, we had produced up to like $40,000 in a month as well throughout that process. And going back to like pretty much ground zero or nothing, a lot of the process was that there's times where the getting's good. And you look at 2007, 2008, 2006, the getting was good for a lot of people. There's a lot of people making money. And so it's when people can not only make money, produce, and you have to master production first. Number one thing you master. And this is what I tell all of our guys, and what we talk about a lot in the $1 Billion Brotherhood Facebook group, is first is production. You have to learn how to go out there and create money on demand. You have to be able to print money through your expertise and your knowledge base, duplicatable over and over again, where you've mastered production. The next one's keeping it, being smart with the money, not just sitting there and bleeding it out. And the third one's growing money. Like, how do you then go out there and take money and actually make it grow? Like, if you had a lump sum of $100,000, how do you make $100,000, $110,000 and beyond? And so a lot of the things that I did inside of that process, I think were kind of lucky. Like, I did the right actions and I got a result. But it was proven real quickly. And I always say that pressure doesn't create weakness, it exposes it. During times of pressure and when things weren't going as easily, we cracked. And they say in a pipe, if the pressure's turned up and the pipe bursts in an area, the only thing that happened was the pressure in the pipe exposed the weakest part of the pipe. The whole pipe didn't disintegrate and explode. One area exploded, which is called the weakest point. And this is what I love about pressure in people's lives, is that when you put pressure on people, that weakest point will get revealed. And it's up to them to either complain about it or take it as a blessing and realize this is the area that I need to improve most. And that's what had happened to me, is that the pressure came on me, exposed a weakness, and I didn't know how to produce. I didn't know how to keep, and I didn't know how to grow money.
Unbelievable. So at that point, I love one thing that you said too, that I think a lot of people will miss, is that you were still investing in yourself. I think a lot of people, if they're not having a ton of financial success, they think, oh, I can't spend money on myself. I can't buy that book. I can't go to that seminar. I can't hire that coach. Obviously, that's the wrong mindset, because that is exactly what can change your circumstances. So when you are at that point in your life, like you said, you're still investing in yourself. Is this the time where you really started hiring coaches or masterminds, or was that a little after you got started with $1 Billion Body?
Nah, dude, that's a great question. So you gotta think, this is probably like I'm about 21, 22 years old. And I remember going back, getting into that 400 square foot apartment. We lived there for 6 months. And I realized at this point that I had to take like a big piece of humble pie. My dad owned his business. He wanted to give me a piece of the business. And I remember this moment of being like, I got to go clean carpets, or else I'm not going to be able to pay for anything. At this point, remember, like, I hadn't had a job. The only way I justified this was thinking this is a family business and I'm probably going to own it one day, and I own a piece of it. So I kind of am looking at it as like, this is a piece of mine. And I went out there and I started cleaning carpets just to be able to like get by. And this is where Amanda was still grinding. Like, we had dreams, but it was almost like we put on the back burner. I was kind of like socked in the stomach. And this is where I actually picked up golf. You know, I started getting good at golf because I was going out there and I was fulfilling a void in my life of improvement, a void in my life of connection, a void in my life of winning with some external activity. And I find this in guys so much with games on their phone, different little games that they play, what things where they go out there and like they exude energy into these different activities that aren't their responsibilities. So there's a big difference between like your passions and your responsibilities. And that was a huge turning point for me, is when I realized, wow, golf for me, because of my destiny, isn't a responsibility. Me providing for my wife and our future family is a responsibility. And that's when I started realizing that my passions and my responsibilities in life were two not different things, but it was easy to cut through because as a passionate guy, I could go out there and be the best coffee maker in the world, the best golfer in the world, the best motocross rider in the world. I believe I could be the best basketball player in the world. Like there's no limit to what I think I can do. But it's like, how do I narrow that down into my responsibilities? Because the more successful you get, the more opportunity you get. So I went out there, I was cleaning carpets. I remember getting to the lowest of low, literally couldn't afford a haircut. My hair looked stupid. I was wearing hand-me-down clothes, living in a 400 square foot apartment, not wanting to do any work after I got done with carpet cleaning. And this was the point where I really started going backwards in my thinking of success. I became kind of one of those people that was like, this stuff just doesn't work. I remember showing up to an event. My wife kept investing in herself. And I remember dropping her off at an event. And the parking at that event was $30. And it was free for me to go into this event. But I remember leaving and going and hitting a bucket of golf balls for like $15 instead of going to that event because I thought I was saving money. What a terrible mindset. I thought, wow, if I just go and hit balls instead, I'm saving $15. And this is what a lot of people that don't listen to podcasts just like this, they do. They go and they think, wow, if I don't get educated, I'm saving money. But what I didn't know is what I was missing out on. And so I went through years of that. My dad got into a bad motorcycle accident. I had to take over the business for 2.5 years. And those 2.5 years, I really planted myself in this business, grew the business, made it flourish. But ultimately, I was neglecting BDP and the passion, the impact that we're making in men. And I remember it was when my Navy SEAL mentor that I was just with yesterday, he's been my mentor for 8 years. I remember I came home and he had just come back from deployment, and I was so excited to tell him, like, you wouldn't believe it. I'm going to make the biggest carpet cleaning company, and I'm going to buy like 10 different carpet cleaning companies. I'm going to consult them. And then when the economy collapses, I'm going to buy them all up. I'm going to have the biggest carpet cleaning company in San Diego. And he looked at me and he said, you haven't changed since I left. And that was like one of those moments again that if I was still a little kid, it would have crushed me. Because I was talking about the biggest things ever. And sometimes talking about your dreams is more vulnerable than talking about your failures. Because you're putting your true self out there. And when people stomp on it, it hurts. And really, at the end of the day, he was showing me that even though the dream and the thing I was working on was growing, I had stopped growing. There's a big difference. You know, just because maybe someone's in sales, I had a friend that was in sales, his income kept on growing because he was doing better in sales. But he as a person had stopped growing in that position. And that's up to him to choose whether he wants to stay comfortable or move on. And that's when I realized that I had to go out there and do something different. Every day I wake up and I'm freaked out at the thought that am I sitting here talking big game and not growing? And so even when I saw him yesterday, I was like, oh my goodness, I was checking myself. Like, even though I'm crushing it and all these different things, is he going to come up to me and say that same thing again? And that very much so motivates me.
That is fantastic. And like you said, it's one of those things where people could have a choice. They could either take that feedback and just fall apart, or they could just be motivated and go on to start what you have. I think that's so powerful. And it sounds like you've had mentors. I know you run masterminds, and we'll get a little more into the $1 billion mastermind and body that you guys have. But I'm curious, like, surrounding yourself with the right people, because a lot of people that are going to be in that state are probably going to be hanging out with similar people. But like you said, you're going and you're putting your dreams out there, and it is vulnerable. It is hard. People are going to laugh. They don't understand it. Like, I've went through that personally, and I've just stopped hanging out with certain people because it's just not benefiting me. So can you talk about how people should be spending their time and how they can meet new people and mentors and people that really inspire them to be better?
Yeah, dude. And screw the people that don't support you. It hurts even more when someone you look up to thinks your idea is stupid and thinks what you're doing is dumb. That's where it hurts, because the other people you can justify, like, oh, they're not the same. They're not entrepreneurs. These people are like, energy suckers. But when the ones correct you that you look up to, that hurts even more. And it should hurt more because they're the ones that their opinion actually matters, and you need to actually go change something. So for me, this was the one area that I was missing. I was motivated. I was hardworking. All the plans are already out there. Anything you want to do is out there. Like, look at YouTube, go talk to someone. Like, the education is the easy thing to get now. Back in the day, everyone knew your family. They knew your last name. They saw you in the market. They knew everything about you. Now, and it was super hard to get information at the time. You had to get it from people that passed it down, someone who wrote it down, recalled accounts. Getting info and education was hard back in the day. Now it's easy to get education and it's hard to make connection because look how simple it is to have a fake connection over a computer and never go outside. So no one knows me down at the local freaking Walmart, like whatever it is. Nobody knows who I am. And so because of that, it makes it super tough. So connection is like the number one thing right now that I think it should be focused on because of how easy everything else is. So I had motivation, which a big part of it you're born with, and a big part of it is through experiences that are difficult. Like the reason I said at the time when my dad told me that I hated it was because now it's something that shaped my life. It was something that was negative, a mess that got turned into a message. And that's some of the best things that can happen. So I moved back down to San Diego. I lost everything, had to start carpet cleaning. And I realized that for like 2.5 years, I literally could not make new friends. And here's some of the transitions that a lot of people are in is that as we learn, like learning about golf. And Michael, remember that like I was talking about golf earlier. When we talk about association of people, most people golf with the same people their entire life. They shoot 85 and they do that for 20 years and they never improve past that. Their swing doesn't get any better. They buy new clubs, but they play with the same old people. But I played with a professional golfer that entire year and it just astronomically changed my game because one, my expectation, I expected to play just like he was. But also with watching the best all the time, I started actually acting and morphing like that. And just so you know, this is how crazy association is. Some things are better caught than taught. Remember that quote. Some things are better caught than taught. This guy used to dip every time we would golf. Like big fat lipper in, right? Like he would be spitting all over the place.
Right.
And I never dipped. But still to this day, if I go to the driving range or if I go golf, I still spit.
I believe that.
Isn't that weird? Like,
yep.
I don't even dip, but because I was also picking up his swing, I was picking up his tempo, I was picking up his habits, his mannerisms, all these little tiny things, I also picked up something that was not relevant, but it shows you how the subconscious mind will pick up things. So if you play with terrible people all the time, you're going to be a terrible golfer. And you're going to be, if you're the best golfer, you're the best entrepreneur, or the best whatever in the room, then you're the person getting the least amount of improvement. I always want to play or I always want to be around people that are way better than me. And that's when I started going to networking events and stuff. But the problem is this, a lot of people know golf theoretically. They know what the swing should look like. A lot of these people are what I call like people sit in the cheap seats. They're people that sit there with their bag of popcorn and they tell everyone, they tell LeBron James like, oh, you should have passed the ball, you idiot. Like as if they can play basketball. And a lot of people live their life in this like cheap seat like type of scenario where they don't actually go out there and do it. So what I noticed is that, man, 2.5 years being in San Diego, no real friendships. I knew entrepreneurship. I knew how LeBron James should pass the ball. I knew how he should have dunked it instead of passing it. Whatever it is, I knew how Tiger Woods should have gone back to his old swing, but I wasn't seeing the results. And what ends up happening is like you want to hang out with successful people, but you don't think that you deserve it. And you don't know why they would ever want to hang out with you because you're like, I haven't gotten the result yet. Like I feel like I need to be successful and then I can hang out with successful people. And that was what my thought was. I was like, how am I supposed to bridge this gap? I'm a loser, can't afford a haircut that smells like a carpet cleaning van, but I'm supposed to go out there and hang out with the most successful people in the world. I felt like an imposter. So one of the things that everyone can do right now is actually dream up who they're going to be in the future and what they think life's going to be like. Project it out 20 years. And if you start seeing like how successful and how confident and how accomplished you are, you can actually take that confidence into the present right now. Because it's not lying being that confident. It's just experiencing something that hasn't happened yet. All you're doing is choosing to be something that you're already going to be. You just haven't hit it yet. It's like going up to the first tee and going, I'm going to be the number one golfer in the world because I can see it in 20 years. And so I'm going to walk with that confidence right now when I tee off, not being a fake, but just knowing what's to come. And that was a huge transitional point for us. And like you said, investing in masterminds was one of the biggest. My dad got into a motorcycle accident and I couldn't go to a live event called Thrive that we didn't get to see each other at, but you went to as well. And this was the first year of Thrive, couldn't go. And I remember my wife going to this event And during that event, she gave me a phone call and she said, hey, there's this thing. It's like $5,000. It's like a 3-day event afterwards. I really feel like we need to do this. And the guy, which was Cole Hatter's dad, was with her and said, like, you guys are too freaking broke to invest in this. Like, that's when you know you're broke, is when someone who's selling something won't sell it to you because you're so broke. And that's where we were at. And I remember just sitting there like, man, inside of my relationship, like, it's already negative and I'm already wrong if I don't trust her. But if I trust her and it fails, at least I did the right thing. And that's huge for a relationship. And so I said, honey, you know what? You would never do anything to hurt us. Like, let's do it. So we dropped $5,000 on a credit card, increased the credit limit, did whatever it took. And that's when I started realizing that investing in relationships, education, and relationships was the best thing you can do. And some of the best ways to do that is in live events that I had experienced earlier in life. And some of the best ways to do it is inside of masterminds. But I'll tell you the truth. $5,000 investment. I always tell people, do they think that was a good investment or a bad investment? They always say, dude, that was the best investment you could have ever made. Look at you now. Like, that was the transition. Like, that was when everything changed. And I said, no, that's freaking stupid, because like most people would never make that investment that I made because they can't see the outcome yet. If I wouldn't have made that investment, I would have been $5,000 richer. I wouldn't have been as far in debt, right? Like, there was tons of great things, but I would have never known what I would have missed out on. And so now hindsight, of course, is 2020, but most people wouldn't make that same, even a fraction of the same risk at 23 years old. And so we went out, and 6 months later, I hadn't seen one change. People were telling me to refund. These were all those people like you were talking about, Michael, like the people that are around you that aren't pushing you.
Those
right?
naysayers are loud, aren't they?
Yeah, it's like, oh, like you should refund and do blah, blah, blah. And like, they're telling me all this stuff. And I'm like, I don't want your life.
Right.
And so something inside of me, just like almost ego, didn't want to refund. And so and I'm talking like this is right before that 3-day event. So I hadn't even really experienced it yet. I went to that 3-day event. I saw people that believed in me. I saw people that pushed me and were better than me and got me to operate at a different level. I stopped thinking about the 10Ks a month and I started thinking about 10Ks a day. I started expecting differently. We went out and we booked over $20,000 in revenue inside of BDB that month. And since then, we have not had a non-profitable month inside of the business. And it all started from that one environment. Was it something we learned? No. It was the people. It was being in the environment. It was some things are better caught than taught. And we've consistently done that on higher levels. I wrote a check just this month for $25,000 for 2-day meetings inside of a mastermind. Why? Because if it's giving you an ROI like that, why would you ever stop? And so what did I learn at the very beginning? You stop doing the things that got you there. Most people, they do a mastermind, they get the most out of it, and then they leave them and they try to save money rather than investing in the very thing that got them the breakthrough. And so that was a huge turning point for me. I think that free stuff is great if you have no money, but you're always going to get a lesser ROI than when you invest. I always tell people, if it was $0 to join a $25,000 mastermind, but you got no improvement from it, or you can invest 25 grand and see exponential improvement, which one would you choose? And the majority of the time, that's how it actually works.
I could not agree more with that. I have found that out the hard way. I tried to do everything on my own at the beginning of my entrepreneurship and just was not getting the results. And it didn't change until I started hiring coaches, getting in masterminds, and just having that accountability. And like you said, when someone else believes in you, then you start to believe in yourself sometimes, and that can be the catalyst for it. So that is incredible. I know we're a little late on time, so I do want to just briefly touch. I want to hear more about your business. I know that it's something that's helping men change their lives, and I would just love for you to talk about the brand and what you guys are doing, and then we'll just finish up here. Does that sound good?
Yeah, dude, absolutely. So yeah, with BDB, we're just on a mission to redefine what it means to be a businessman. There's men out there that are sacrificing health and their relationships to try to build a business, to ultimately not build as big of a business as if they did have balance in all areas. So we're on a mission to help these men, the future leaders of tomorrow in the business world, that want to have success without sacrifice. And the way that we know we're successful is when we create what we call three-dimensional businessman, a guy who has it all in health, wealth, and relationships. But not only that they're actually giving it away to other people, meaning they're inspiring people, they're gaining more influence, they're mentoring people and pushing people to live that lifestyle as well, to the point where we believe in the future that world leaders and countries will be asking the men inside the community and the community in general how we set up our lives for success so that they can model that inside of the way that they run their countries. But it all starts with yourself first. And so we actually have a free Facebook group for the guys that are listening to this. It's called the $1 Billion Brotherhood. Just say that Nicholas sent you. You'll get accepted as over 2,000 other just businessmen, men who own businesses that want to be accepted for where they're at, but also held to a higher standard of what we expect. And this is something that's not really done in most communities. They either do one or the other. They accept you where you're at and they leave you there, which is kind of an ass thing to do, but at least you're accepted if that's what you want, but that's not here. And then there's other people that have an expectation and they don't accept you where you're at. You have to fit into their mold. For us, we accept where people are at financially, health-wise, relationship-wise. It does not matter. But also we have a standard that we want to hold them to that ultimately is, what do they want out of life? How did they get there? And how do we hold you to that standard to make sure that you get there? And that's what we do inside the community. So yeah, it's been a fantastic time. The Brotherhood's been growing like crazy. We do 30-day challenges every single January. We'll be launching with a 30-day challenge that just like kills it for all the guys. It's only $99 investment. It sponsors a kid to go to an after-school program, because I believe that if you're going to go out there and solve a problem, also what happens if you just kill the beginning of it? And I see that kids with fatherless homes, I see kids that are growing up in bad environments, see kids that don't have the correct people around them. And so we get these kids at a young age to be able to go to these after school programs and hear from Devin Wyman, which he's a NFL Super Bowl champion. And he's like one of the best speakers that I've ever seen. He gets these kids to write notes that they were cutting themselves, wanted to commit suicide, wanted to kill people. Kids have given up weapons at school, all because of him talking to them. And so each guy that invests in themselves actually sponsors one kid. So each guy, so let's say we had 100 guys go through the 30-day challenge, 100 kids then would be able to go to that program, all because of them. Why? Because men, when they invest in themselves, impacts the people around them. But just to show that right off the bat, we make sure that part of our funds go to impacting the kids right away, so that every man knows no matter what, even if they like don't apply anything or whatever, they're still impacting someone with the investment in themselves.
Fantastic. I love the for a purpose type business model that you have there. Obviously learned that from our mutual friend Cole Hatter, and that's just incredible that you have that, because like you said, you're helping the problem and the solution. So fantastic. You mentioned that you have the Facebook group. Where else should people follow you before we ask the last question?
Dude, Instagram's where it's at. Come follow me on Instagram. Let's DM back and forth. You could check out like what my wife and I are doing all the time. We've been married for almost 7 years now. We just got back from Napa and we explored all these crazy vineyards, and we've done things where we've gone to like the Tiffany Vault. There's only 2 in the world and it's not open to public, and we got to go in there and had all 3 layers of Tiffany's in Beverly Hills, like totally rented out with Steve Sims and fun stuff like that. So it's a little bit behind the scenes and a lot more I would say like less perception-y, you know. We share like everything. And also if they love podcasts, which obviously they do, we have the $1 Billion Body podcast, which we do a power couple episode every Friday. So anyone who wants to be in a relationship, is in a relationship, or future will, like that's the place to be, because we talk about like problems, we talk about growth. It's definitely interesting to grow a business together every day for over 6 years. Every day working in the office together on one core mission, and we share with how other couples can do that as well.
Fantastic. Yeah, and I'll go ahead and include all the links down in the show notes as well. So perfect. Thank you for getting everyone connected with you. So for my last question, I'm always fascinated with people's ability to speed up success, and that's something that you've been able to accomplish at a very young age. So what do you think is something people can start doing today to improve their life or their business?
The number one thing they can do is get around good people. End of story. Like, it first has to start with them taking 100% responsibility. I talked about knowing their responsibilities compared to just their passions. And so getting clear on that, taking 100% responsibility for where they're at, knowing where they're at today and how they can improve on it. And then that allows them to be in an environment when they're around high-level people, they'll start taking and gleaning from them to get closer to that goal. But the first step is going to be taking 100% responsibility. There's many people that are around great people that don't change. And it's because they still haven't taken responsibility for their life and the outcome that it's produced so far, and taking 100% responsibility that if it's going to change, it's up to them. if it's meant to be, it's up to me.
Fantastic. That is one of my favorite success principles from Jack Canfield's book right there. Number 1, I believe in it. So incredible. Well, thank you so much for spending your morning with us. A ton of value, and just wanted to extend my gratitude again.
Thanks, man. Appreciate it.
No problem. Wow, I am fired up. That was another great episode. I want to give a ton of gratitude for Nicholas for being on the show. He was one of the first guests, and as you can tell, he just has an amazing story and one that you can have a lot of good takeaways from. So a few different things I really want you to remember from this episode that I know will help your life or your business, or both, really. Because the first thing that he talked about was investing in himself. Now, he spent a lot of money and continues to spend a lot of money on masterminds and coaches and events and all kinds of different things, because he knows that the better he is as a person, the more he can develop as a businessman, the more he's going to show up in the world, the more impact he's going to make. So don't be afraid to spend some money investing in yourself. The second thing he talks about was the impact that getting fit had in his life. And you hear this from a lot of big entrepreneurs, whether it's Ed Mylett or Tom Bilyeu and so many other people, is that fitness is more than just looking good and feeling good. It's really about what it does to your mindset, and it's about creating that discipline and commitment to showing up every day, to hitting the gym or going on the run you don't want to, or getting up early, or eating healthy when it's easier to eat out. And so don't forget that fitness is much more than just looking good. It's about showing up better in the world, having more confidence, being more committed and dedicated to your goals. And then the last thing, I absolutely love the quote, "If it's meant to be, it's up to me." Now, he talks a lot about that because he refers to being 100% accountable for his entire life and taking 100% responsibility. Now, Jack Canfield is the author of the Success Principles, and he talks about that in depth in the book, which I highly recommend and have linked in the show notes. And that book really just talks all about, if you don't take 100% responsibility for your life, you're giving it up to external factors, to other people and environments and circumstances. So if you want to be successful in your business, in your life, and anything you're doing, you have to accept that you are where you are because of you, and only you can change it. So once you take advantage of that, then your life is up to you. So enjoy this. I'm so glad you guys were here. Thank you so much again. Be sure to follow Nicholas, check out the podcast, check out his Facebook group, and everything is linked in the show notes. So thanks again for being here, and have an epic day. Thanks for listening to Inspire Your Success podcast with Michael Leonard. If you like this show and want to learn more, check out inspireyoursuccess.com/podcast. Also, please leave us a review on iTunes to let us know how we're doing. Join us next week for more tips and tools to help you create the life you deserve.